The Kalmar Union was a union formed by Denmark that included Norway and Sweden, aiming to combat the Hanseatic League to the south. Its first ruler was Margaret I, who obtained the crowns of all three countries through marriage and inheritance. She was known as a wise ruler who ruled with far-sighted tact and caution. She had no heirs, so she adopted her great-nephew Bogislav of Pomerania and renamed him Eric, a more Nordic name. In this timeline, Margaret educates Eric better in diplomacy rather than expansionist conquest. This is important to make sure that Eric doesn't get into another war with the Hanseatic League, which, in our timeline, crippled the Kalmar Union. Due to his foreign birth, Eric would sympathize with the Norwegians, Swedes, and Danes equally, ensuring equal treatment of all three groups. Equal treatment was important because it would weaken Swedish calls for independence. The Kalmar Union would then enact a set of tolls on the Sound Strait. In this alternate timeline, King Eric can avoid war with much of the Hanseatic League by reducing the toll for some of the German states. Money made from these tolls would fund an invasion of the Novgorod Republic. This would solidify Swedish and Norwegian unity in the Union as they now controlled their claimed lands. It is also around this time that a Kalmar constitution is written, establishing a permanent, single unified state. This slightly controversial move would be met with a few revolts, particularly from miners in Sweden, but they were easily dealt with. The constitution would include the creation of a unified Scandinavian language, the establishment of the capital in Gothenburg, and the power divisions between the three main federal states, where limited power is held by a single monarch chosen by the previous monarch. Most importantly, 3 representatives were elected by each state who all had checks and balances to make sure one group didn't get too much power. The people of Scandinavia were fond of this modern style of constitutional monarchy because they could vote for someone to represent them in the government. The country then set its eyes on the Teutonic Order, inhabiting modern-day Estonia and Latvia. In the first major showing of the unified Scandinavian naval prowess, the Teutonic Order surrendered within 8 months to the overwhelming strength and discipline of the Kalmar soldiers. The Kalmar Union would then take advantage of the Russian event known as the Time of Troubles, where many claimants to the Russian throne would attempt to assert control. Scandinavia would easily push through their under-defended border, seizing southern Ingria, along with some more Arctic coast. The Kalmar Union would then enter the 30 Years' War, a war between the Catholics and the Protestants. They would do relatively well, seizing some of the western Pomerania region along with some of the Polish-Lithuania borderlands and coastal cities, used for trade and to establish dominance over the Baltic Sea. This would be Scandinavia's peak power projection over Europe. In 1608, Scandinavia colonized the islands of Greenland, Newfoundland, and the coast of modern-day Hudson Bay, naming their new colony Vinland. The Vinland colony was settled by many Scandinavians in hopes of escaping to a place where they could be free from government control. For example, some remaining pagan Scandinavians who refused to convert to Christianity would settle these new lands. Britain and France would eventually fight over a border dispute in Ohio. Britain, with Scandinavian aid, would win the war, and together they would carve up France's colonies in North America. Back in Europe, however, the Scandinavian dominance of Northern and Eastern Europe was about to be challenged. Russia, wanting to reclaim their lost lands, Poland, Lithuania, tired of Scandinavian supremacy over the Baltic, and Prussia, scared of Scandinavian dominance over northern Germany, would all attack Scandinavia in the Great Northern War. Scandinavia would dig into defensive positions along their border, not allowing the coalition to push far into their lands. After a long, costly war, Scandinavia would expectedly lose, but only had to give up their recently obtained North German lands to Prussia, the Courland Peninsula to Poland-Lithuania, and some of their land around Lake Peipus to Russia. Despite their loss, Scandinavia was still a powerful threat on the European continent, showing they could deal with multiple great powers at once using their well-equipped and trained army. However, this wouldn't be the last of their losses. Due to Scandinavia's close ties to the British, they would be invaded by France during the Napoleonic Wars. France would push through Jutland and most of Scandinavia's Baltic holdings. After the failed French invasion of Russia, when they lost a majority of their army, France would be pushed back out of Jutland and then defeated. After the war, however, Russia would hold on to the Baltic lands Scandinavia lost to France during the war. During the Napoleonic Wars, many American colonies declared their independence, including the United States of America, Mexico, and the Federal Republic of Central America. Finland, however, stayed loyal to Scandinavia and explored more of the Arctic coast, eventually meeting up with Russian-held Alaska. Scandinavia would then ally themselves with France, as both of them equally feared the unification of Germany under Prussian leadership. France wanted to maintain the balance of power on the continent, while Scandinavia wanted to protect its southern border, which contained a sizable minority of German people at this point. Prussia would go to war with both France and Scandinavia. Prussia would quickly take Paris and Holstein, unifying all of Germany under a single state. After this, Germany would hold the Berlin Conference to decide how to divide up Africa. Scandinavia would get some colonies, but they were way more focused on maintaining Finland and recovering their economy after their loss to Germany. They were able to expand upon many of their outposts in Africa. In the final deal, they were given the territories of Ghana, Niger-Congo, modern-day DRC, and Makualand in modern-day Mozambique. Although they probably could have pushed for more, their close partnership with Britain didn't necessitate making many colonies of their own. Back in Europe, World War I starts to unfold. Germany, Austria-Hungary, Bulgaria, and the Ottomans face off against Russia, Britain, France, Serbia, and Scandinavia. The Central Powers are eventually defeated by the Allies even faster than in our own timeline. After the war, Scandinavia regained Holstein from Germany as well as expanding its African colonies. Germany after the war would be crippled due to the Treaty of Versailles, and an ultra-nationalist government would be put into power. In the early stages of World War II, Germany would use blitzkrieg tactics to launch an invasion into Scandinavia. They would occupy all of the Danish state, southern Sweden, and southern Norway. However, the German armies would get bogged down in the snowy mountains and extreme conditions in Scandinavia. The Germans would struggle to make much more progress, especially due to the amount of guerrilla fighters sabotaging the Germans during their advance. Germany would eventually launch their Operation Barbarossa into the Soviet Union. Through this invasion, they would attack Scandinavian Baltic holdings as well. Germany would not be able to finish off the Soviet Union or Scandinavia. After the United States joined the war, Germany would lose World War II. After the war, Scandinavia would obtain an occupation zone over some of northern Germany. This occupation zone would soon unify with the rest of democratic West Germany. Scandinavia would join NATO and become an integral part of the alliance during the Cold War between the US and the USSR. Like many other European powers at the time, Scandinavia would start to decolonize, giving independence to Ghana, Niger-Congo, and Makualand. Later, they would also give Finland independence, but they still hold close diplomatic and economic ties. Additionally, 2 more states were added to the Kalmar Union, a Finno-Samic state and an Icelandic state. This leaves us in the modern day, where Scandinavia is one of the richest countries in the world in terms of total GDP and GDP per capita. Their GDP is $2.56 trillion, 8th in the world between France and Russia, with a population of 29 million, 50th in the world between Madagascar and Côte d'Ivoire. The capital of Scandinavia is Gothenburg, which recently reached a population of 1 million. Other major cities include Stockholm, Copenhagen, Oslo, Helsinki, and Reykjavik, the capitals of the 5 different states. Finland, a member of NATO, is another important nation to come from this timeline. They have a population of 24.3 million, 56 between North Korea and Taiwan, and a GDP of $1.29 trillion, 15th between Spain and Indonesia. Finland is a cultural melting pot full of many immigrants from Britain, France, Russia, Ireland, and Germany, along with hundreds and thousands of pagan settlers. This has created a country rich in both culture and history. That is where I will end this scenario. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe. As a small channel, this would mean a lot to me. Also, make sure to leave a comment if you have any questions about this scenario, or any ideas for a future video.